When I was in school, let's say in fourth or fifth grade, I remember this incident very clearly in my mind where I was roaming the playing grounds of our school and aimlessly trying to catch butterflies. And that is a core memory for me for whatever reason. There is a certain innocence and simplicity in a child's mind and worldview that adults can never understand or replicate as much as they try to. There is a sense of nostalgia and longing of going back to the good old days, quote unquote, that we are all left with after we become adults. For my own journey, this transition from childhood to adulthood was a very clear, specific moment that I remember. I don't know when exactly it was, but I could clearly see the shift in my mind that before then everything was all rosy and rainbows and nothing really mattered. And when that transition did happen, it was all very serious. At the time, I didn't realize that I would not be that child ever again, which is sad because if I did know, I would have tried to enjoy it a bit more. There are a few passages in this book, The Little Prince by Exupéry, and when I read those passages, it instantly transported me back to that feeling that I had when I was a child, which I've been trying so long to get back to as an adult and failing miserably. So I was very glad when I read these lines. Let me give you an example here. Quote, all grown-ups were once children, although few of them remember it. End quote. Another one, and this is what I was talking about when I was giving you the example of butterflies. Quote, when you tell them, and here by them the author means adults, that you have made a new friend, they never ask you any questions about essential matters. They never say to you, what does his voice sound like? What games does he love best? Does he collect butterflies? Instead, they demand, how old is he? How many brothers has he? How much does he weigh? How much money does his father make? Only from these figures do they think they have learned anything about him. If you were to say to a grown-up, quote, I saw a beautiful house made of rosy brick with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof, they would not be able to get any idea of that house at all. If you would have said to them, I saw a house that cost $20,000, then they would exclaim, oh, what a pretty house that is. End quote. It's insane to me that we as adults do not talk about people in this way anymore. Why is it that every time we talk about people, even amongst adult groups, or even with your peers, why do we hark back to where they work, what's their height, or I don't know, any other such thing, where they live, for example? Why is it not the norm that we describe people by a new metric that, for example, let's say, one, what interests them or what they like, for example. Number two, what they made you feel. And number three, what their opinion on XYZ is. Why is this not the norm? Why do we always have to go back to, oh, he's 20 years old and he works here or studies this and that's his major and he lives here and he, I don't know, it just seems pointless and a disservice to the human spirit that you have reduced them to these numbers. When it is clear that when you meet someone for the first time, let's say you meet a new friend or are out on a new date, the only thing that matters is how you feel or how they made you feel and how you made them feel. When that is all you are left with, why is that not an introduction to them when you introduce them to other people? So again, this is just one very small example of how we have forgotten to keep the child in us alive. And there are so many examples in this book that explain the same basic concepts brilliantly. There is no other word. There is a analogy to taming pets as to how we deal with people in our everyday lives. So again, the entire book is full of metaphors that you can use in your everyday life. Again, I'll give you another example of, okay, I just mentioned taming, so I'll just talk about that metaphor a bit. So, you know how we become used to our surroundings, right? And the people we surround ourselves with. Exupéry in this book uses taming a pet as an example of how to deal with people. Let's say you meet a new person. Here's how you should deal with them. Quote. And here we are talking about the little prince meeting a fox. And again, like I said, it's just a metaphor, but just listen to this. Quote. This is the fox saying, to me, you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, on your part, have no need of me. To you, I am nothing more than a fox, like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I shall be unique in all the world. Continuing later, life is very monotonous. All chickens are just alike, and all the men are just alike. I am a little bored, but if you tame me, it will be as if the sun came to shine on my life. I shall know the sound of a step that will be different from all the others. Other steps send me hurrying back underneath the ground. Yours will call me like music out of my burrow. Continuing later, one only understands the things one tames. Men have no more time to understand anything. They buy things already made at the shops, but there is no shop anywhere where one can buy friendship, and so men have no friends anymore. If you want a friend, tame me. End quote. In this very short excerpt, you can see that relationships are built only by patience, only by showing up at the same time every day. And what that does is it builds a bond that is unique and special to just the two of you. And that isn't that something that no one else in the world can have? And isn't that the only thing that you will have that no one else can have? So isn't that the only thing that you should be chasing and craving for? Anyway, getting back to the book, this theme of taming again comes up later when the pilot and the little prince are saying goodbye towards the end of the novel. And again, the theme is that of a friendship being lost and finding some meaning in the meaningful time that they spent together, and how taming in the metaphorical sense always causes pain when one of the persons dies or leaves, as in the metaphor. So again, very interesting that something that is so precious and special has also the power to make you cry and smile, and essentially is the only thing that matters. And that I call brilliant commentary. I also wanted to quickly mention the famous quote from this book before I move on to my notes, which is that, quote, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. End quote. So again, there is a whole debate to be had on rational decision making versus emotional decision making. When you derive at some actions through logic, but your heart says otherwise, which one should you pick? And the book clearly makes the case for following your heart. Again, there is a lot of discussion that can be had on this topic, but if I had to add my own 2 cents to this, I would say that it is really hard to follow your heart when everyone you see around you follows logic, or at least seemingly is following logic. It's very hard to break away from this society where everyone is focused on optimizing or getting better or achieving some goal. When everyone is doing that, do you have the courage to follow your heart? Because that will come with a lot of uncertainty. So, do you have that courage? Or I don't know what you call it. Some people will call it stupidity, of course. But again, I'm not making the case for either, but just be aware of it. We can leave the discussion at that for now. Let's get into my notes quickly. Unlearning all the conditioning beliefs that you were fed as a child and questioning everything. Well, this is a good exercise to do nonetheless, where you have been brought up in a certain way, or you see something that your parents do and you just emulate it, blindly believing that this is how it is. Well, you don't have that excuse as an adult. And children do that. That is the whole point again that the book makes, that some of these things the adults do just do not make sense. And the only way to unlearn all of that is to spend time with children, understand how children think, and try to emulate that. Brilliant. I'm sure there is some Epstein joke in there, but I'll just move right past it. Anthropomorphism. Oh, how incredible. One thing that this book does brilliantly is give voice to everything. Everything says something. The flowers talk, the fox talks, the snake talks, the little prince talks, of course. There is some allusion to the little prince being able to read minds as well when he interacts with our pilot who crashes in the desert also. But again, this technique is very common in movies, especially animated movies, where again, everything talks. So again, the point of all of it being that it's very easy for humans to connect to inanimate objects, a la a flower on another planet that might be eaten by a sheep. And it also helps us connect to some themes of uniqueness, where, for example, the flower having to defend itself only with four thorns is crying in a corner, and our little prince would say globe on it. Again, very touching that you give voice to inanimate objects. And again, I have done this with plants, especially, where I believe that talking to your plants is the best thing you can do to them. I don't know if there is any scientific research on this, but again, you might call it superstition, but this is my superstition, I guess, that I believe that talking calmly and in a pleasant way to your plants make them grow much better than if you hurl abuses at them, even with good nutrition and water. So again, it might be a dumb belief, but that is one thing that I wanted to mention is good about this book. I usually also try to criticize everything I read, and if I had to do that for this book, it would be that it is a children's book primarily. It is meant for children, even though some themes are more for adults to take lessons from. I recognize that, but if you are a child, or if this book, as it is very commonly assigned in uh, schools at a very young age, if you cultivate that kind of thinking, then I don't know, you might grow into a better person with more empathy, I guess. So that is good. Uh, but again, it's primarily a children's book. Oh, what else do we have? Observing things and being happy in experiencing things versus hustle and goal oriented living. I think I talked briefly on this, where again, a classic life advice of living in the moment. And again, I think of the time when the little prince says something to the effect of, isn't the dewdrops the only thing that matter, or isn't this moment right now the only thing that matters? Something like that towards the end, where he's giving advice to our pilot. So again, very touching and something that we all should remember. Absurdity of blind rule. Oh, that is a this is a great point, number 7, where uh, so the little prince obviously visits multiple planets through his journey, right? And this one planet is with a lamplighter. Again, there is another one with a businessman that I find very interesting. Again, the point being that people think they own money, people think they own houses, but it doesn't matter what you own, but the only thing that matters is what you do with it. If you have money and you keep it in a locked box in your cupboard, it's of no use to anyone, least of all to you. So again, just the point being that owning real estate doesn't do anything unless you do something for it. aka taking care of it, putting a garden in it, for example, or painting a new wall. Then you build connections, and that makes that thing special for you. And if you give that thing voice, then it makes you special to that thing. And that will be a more fulfilling relationship than otherwise, where it's just a number in your notebook or bank account for that matter. So that is one theme that we keep seeing again and again. Anyway, this is another planet that I was talking about, but the lamplighter one is very interesting, where he doesn't realize the futility of his own work, and it's a brilliant commentary on our corporate work cultures today, where you blindly follow instructions even though it is outdated and not useful to anyone, but just because you get an order from up above, or you did get some order from up above and you didn't take time to reevaluate it at a future date, what you do is you keep doing what you're comfortable with without breaking the wall of new things. Again, going out of your comfort zone theme, I guess. So again, a lot of complicated yet obvious life lessons of living in the moment, or going out of your comfort zone, or having patience. We have all heard these lines or phrases or ideas, but to put all of this in a way that can connect to children even is brilliantly done by this writer. So I have nothing but praise for him. Brilliant commentary, it holds up every time. And The Little Prince will stay with me for a long time, and he will keep reminding me of keeping in mind what matters and focusing only on that. Love, relationship to people around you, your health. It's these three things that I would say matter the most. And this book is a great reminder for that. I will keep coming back to this for sure. Anyway, that's enough of a review for this book. I think I've spoken quite a bit. So thank you all for listening.